microphones when finished and not addressing the committee, and also turn off your cell phones. It seems to be disruptive during the committee meeting as well. I would like to welcome this morning Representative Ron Hyland, who is replacing Representative Ken Corbett, and then also Representative Megan Lynn, who is replacing Representative Shannon Francis this morning. So welcome to Appropriations. Committee, there is a correction in regards to the minutes on the February 10th meeting, and that is in regards to the ERO number 47, and the language needs to be Representative Carpenter moved that the Committee on Appropriations recommends to the House of Representatives the disapproval of ERO number 47 and the sponsorship and introduction of a House resolution to disapprove ERO number 47. And then obviously Representative Landwehr seconded the motion, and the motion be passed. So without any discussion, if there is any, those changes we made to the minutes of February 10th. All right, you should have received yesterday a copy of the discussion that we had with the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I had mentioned that I had received by email a list of all the delayed projects from T-Works. And I believe Kathy has sent those out to you. It was a PDF file that was sent out to all the members, so you can see what the construction deadline and time frame is for those delayed projects in T-Works. The next item on the agenda, committee, are there any bill introductions? Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of you guys might have heard about a bit of a gas price issue we have. I'll get to the bill number in a second, but I just want to add a little context for you real quick. The city of Heston's normal gas bill last February was $120,000. Their gas bill this month is $5.5 million. That applies to a number of our municipalities throughout the state. So with that, I want to introduce 21 RS 1425, and I'm going to give Kimberly Savati a second to explain exactly what that bill does and how it'll help our communities.
All right, thank you, Representative Owens. Ms. Savati.
Good morning. Thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity just to give a little bit of color commentary on what the RS number would do. As you all know, the entire state of Kansas, actually, really the central part of the Midwest, ranging all the way from Canada down to Texas, suffered a severe energy crisis last week, and that's sorely affected natural gas bills and electric bills, and our communities, specifically related to the municipal utilities, but as well as customers all across the state, whether you're served by an electric utility, natural gas utility, investor-owned electric co-op, or municipal, will see significantly increased, there will be extraordinary costs associated with this event. And this RS bill number seeks to specifically for municipalities provide one tool that we believe will be needed in a toolkit to help them shield their customers of these extraordinary costs. And this bill would amend the cash basis law specifically related to municipal utilities, and would allow no fund warrants to be issued for disasters, state, local, or federal disasters, and would increase the the time frame on the bond. So from 3 years out to possibly 10 years. Not that we would take 10 years to repay it, but it would give us the opportunity to provide flexibility to shield those customers. Hence the request. And my apologies for the late delay, or for the late introduction. This obviously just happened, so it's all happening in real time right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foddy. Representative Owens, do you want to move the bill introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do move that bill introduction.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Ballard. All those in favor of the bill introduction say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, bill's introduced. Any further bill introductions this morning? Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request a bill introduction for RS 1272, and it has to do with the Board of Regents and an initiative from students, university students across the state.
And what is that initiative?
It is to put a member of the Board of Regents from the universities.
All right, committee, you've heard the bill introduction. Is there a second? seconded by Representative Ballard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bill is introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further bill introductions this morning? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the major item that we're going to be discussing today, and that is going to be the recommendations from the Social Services Budget Committee in regards to the Department of Children and Families and also the Department of Aging and Disability Services. So I will turn it over to Chairman Carpenter. The floor is yours.
Good morning, committee. Mr. Chairman, these are the budgets that we've all been looking for this entire year. So, and Benz, I'm not going to disappoint. They're going to be the most difficult ones that we've seen this year too. So with that, page 78 in your budget books.
For committee, it's volume 1, page 78.
Yes, and I'll start off with the Department of Children and Families. The Department of Children and Families is a cabinet-level agency headed by the secretary appointed by the governor. The mission of the agency is to protect children, promote healthy families, and encourage personal responsibility. The department operates through 9 programs: administration, licensing, child support services, economic and employment services, rehabilitation services, prevention and protection services, developmental disability counsel, client services delivery, and transfers to other agencies. Okay, I think you get the idea. The agency requests a revised estimate of $793.1 million, including $348 million from the State General Fund in 2021. This is an all funds increase of $29.3 million above the 2021 approved estimate. The increase is primarily attributable to the increase in federal funding related to the COVID-19 pandemic for low-income energy assistance program to assist more Kansas households from paying energy bills. The Child Care Block Grant to assist child care providers during the pandemic. Additionally, the increase is attributable to an increase in rehabilitation services funding for the costs associated with the Kansas Modernization Project, which supports the infrastructure of local workforce development centers. For additional case service support in evaluation, training, and job placement, increased funding for the Families First program for the Families First Transition Act funds. The increase is partially offset by the reduction in the Kinship Navigator Development Grant. This is also due to a portion of previously approved grant funding not being distributed at this time. The agency estimates a capital improvement revised estimate of $100,000. You can find that on page 136, all from the Project Maintenance Reserve Fund for ongoing maintenance and repair at the Topeka Service Center. The lease to purchase agreement requires funding to be deposited into the Project Maintenance Reserve Fund for capital improvements to the building. The revised estimate is an increase of $50,000 or 100% over the 2021 approved amount. The governor recommends expenditures of $817 million, including $348.9 million for 2021. This is an all funds increase of $24 million, over or 3% above the 2021 revised estimates. This increase is attributable to federal funding allocated to the agency for expenditures related to COVID-19 funding. The governor concurs with the agency's 2021 revised estimates for capital improvement. The Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendations for 2021. I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Carpenter. In regards to the federal money that was received in fiscal year 2021 of $24.1 million, how was that dispersed within the Department of Children and Families? And also, was that directly from the federal government, or was that the money that was from the Spark Committee and approved by the State Finance Council?
This is CARES money. Yeah, this is all CARES money.
So it was through the Spark Committee?
Yeah, through the Office of Recovery. And I might add that it was $21 million. There was some other money in there, and then the Kansas rent assistance passed through that committee also of $15 million. So it's just a pass-through to the Kansas Housing, what is that called? The Kansas Housing and Resource.
Rental assistance went through the Department of Children and Families.
It did.
It did, right. Any further questions for Chairman Carpenter? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the governor's allotments, and I didn't hear any mention of those. Were those not implemented, or what did the committee decide regarding the governor's allotments?
They were implemented, and we approved those.
Okay. Forgive me, I work on much smaller budgets. Those look like big numbers. Was there, what sort of impact are we talking about on that?
Well, on 2021, it was $5.5 million, and that was out of the Family First Prevention staff dollars and also the grants for the Families First program. And you can find that on page 90.
Okay, I'm looking at the 146.7 million. That's what caught me in the, okay, here we go.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
All right, thank you.
Any
Okay.
further questions for Chairman Carpenter? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that on the page 98, you're showing about almost 12 million reduced resources.
Yeah, that will be in 22.
That's not 21. Okay, thank you.
We'll get to that.
Any further questions on fiscal year 2021? All right, seeing none, Chairman Carpenter, you may move on to 2022.
Okay, here's going to be the meat, folks. All right. The agency requests $776.7 million, all including $355.5 million SGF from 2022 operating expenditures. This is an all funds decrease of $16 million, or 2.1% below the revised 2021 estimate. The decrease is primarily attributable to the end of the receiving COVID-19 related funding through the federal low income energy assistance program and child care development fund. The agency request is a SGF increase of $7 million above the 2021 revised estimate. The agency's SGF increase is attributable to enhancements totaling $18 million, including 9.6 SGF for the adoption assistance, family crisis prevention, a virtual contact center, additional matching funds for the child development block grant. The increases are partially offset by the lack of reappropriations in 2022. The agency request includes 2,537.9 FTE positions for 2022. This is a decrease of 12 positions below the 2021 revised estimate. The decrease is primarily attributable to a decrease in adoption support funding based on a requested enhancement. Overall, the agency anticipates federal funding provided due to the COVID-19 pandemic will not be available for 2022. The request reflects a greater all funds decrease due to the absence of federal funding. Okay. The governor recommends operating expenditures of $3.1 billion, including $1.3 billion for 2022. This is an all funds increase of $2.4 billion, 303% above the agency's 2022 request. The increase is primarily attributable to the governor's executive order, ERO 47, which moves the Kansas Health, the Department of Aging into the Department of Children and Families, creating a new Department for Human Services. Outside the executive order, the increases are detailed below. You can find the increase for Department of Children and Families, $8.8 million on page 93 of the enhancements. And we could go on, but what I will say is here's the way it should read. The governor's recommendations for 2022, absent the ERO. Absent the ERO, the governor recommends $772.9 million, including $345.8 million SGF for the operating expenditures for 2022. This is an all funds decrease of $3.8 million, including $9.7 million from the SGF below the agency's 22 requests. This decrease is primarily attributable to the governor's accepting 2 of the 4 enhancement requests and 7 of the reduced resources budget submission items. The enhancements can be found on page 93, and the reduced resources can be found on page 98. The only reason I read that committee is because, you know, I rail against this ERO, but I'm here to tell you, it is difficult when you take $3 billion and shove it in another budget and try to sort it out. And it's all in this budget. KDADS is all in this budget. And it's just very difficult. And I'm not complaining, I'm just stating fact. Okay, ready? All right, the Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation for 2020 with the following adjustments. Add $250,000 all funds, including $50,000 SGF, to establish a pilot program to support youth in out-of-home placements in the custody of the Secretary of the Department of Children and Families in obtaining a driver's license and funding automobile insurance. Add $300,000 SGF to establishment of a 1-year pilot program for the Hope Ranch for Women. Add language requiring the Hope Ranch for Women to submit a status report detailing activities conducted during the pilot program, including the number of women served, demographics, client services needs at intake, length of services, reasons for case closing, recidivism rate, client costs, and the average project costs. Additionally, the Hope Ranch for Women is required to submit a budget itemization report and a budget transaction report to the House Committee on Social Services Budget by January 31st, 2022. Further recommend that if the reorganization number 47 is disapproved by a vote of either chamber of the legislature, expenditures and funds contained in the Department of Human Services and the governor's recommendations will be shifted back to the agencies from which those expenditures and funds originated prior to the RO. I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, any questions for Chairman Carpenter? Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 2, the $300,000 SGF for Hope Ranch for Women. I've never heard of Hope Ranch. Is that a new organization, and who do they serve and what do they do?
They are located in south central Kansas near Wichita. They serve trafficked women, and they've been in business since 2019. And they came before our committee, and we've received letters of support from Sheriff Easter out of Wichita, the mayor, Brandon Whipple from Wichita, and Derek Schmidt, the Attorney General, and the Sedgwick County Chairman, Pete Mesner.
So, just to follow up, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you very much. So this is a program that's a couple of years old. So what is this? Why the $300,000 now? What's the pilot? Is that something that they expect to be ongoing, or is this going to be an expense that we're going to see throughout the coming years?
Well, I don't know. They've served 25 women so far. And in 2019, the last day that I can find any deals, there were 177 trafficking victims involving 9 business, 45 traffickers, 92 cases in 2019. and 2015, there were 45 cases. So we've seen an uptick in this. I think this came about, some folks in Wichita saw that they were in the top 5 in the nation for human trafficking. And some folks got together and decided to do something about that, and this is a result of that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Humphreys, did you have additional comments?
I just would like to reiterate that Hope Ranch has been in the making for much longer than just 2019, but it took them, maybe that's when they were incorporated. I don't know the exact details, but we've known several of the folks personally who have been involved with Hope Ranch. And it's a population that isn't served, and it's an undisclosed location where women can get out of their trafficking situation. And it's just something that we haven't had before. And I do think it's a one-time, help them get their feet on the ground and get going is what it's for, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
So it's not going to be an ongoing expense and
That's my understanding.
Right. Representative Estes, did you have a comment in regards to this
I was
item?
going to echo what Representative Humphreys said. I've been to their facility. I've taken a tour, and they do phenomenal work to a group of women that kind of they're overlooked right now. If you want to leave that world and you've been demoralized, you have nothing. They provide a very respectful way to get back on your feet, and they have really hard requirements for the women, and the work that they're doing is really good.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our committee had a very good discussion about this, and some of the same questions that you're asking this morning, we asked in our committee. And I can tell you that it was a unanimous decision, but also we agreed that it should be a pilot study. So I'm not sure it would not be ongoing. You know, it depends on, if you look at all the things we're asking them, which is number one, to establish really that credibility. Since we are new to this program, it could be, but right now it's just listed as a pilot program. I think most people are shocked to find out that Kansas is very high on the list of trafficking. And I can't think of the presenter's name, but he explained what they do. And even though we may have had a little reservation, and some of it was around the fact that maybe it was too faith-based or anything like that, but that did not deter us from voting for it because of the need and because of how he presented that program. So for that reason, I would say I certainly was enthusiastic about it, and the committee unanimously supported it.
All right, thank you. Representative Landwehr, did you have a comment on this or something else in the budget? I just want to make sure. So we can stay on the topic of the Hope Ranch right now, and then we'll go back to other comments in regards to the budget. Representative Parker, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sounds like a wonderful program. I was curious, do we know if they're receiving any funding from Sedgwick County or the city of Wichita?
Chairman Carpenter.
I do not. I know last year's budget was $608,000, and I think they take a lot of donations from a lot of people.
Thank you.
Representative Parker, do you have a follow-up question?
That's it. Thank you.
Representative Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo, I'm also on this committee, the Social Services Budget, and it was a really impressive presentation, and I would encourage you to look at their webpage. That's what I did while we were listening to him talk. And I don't think it's been mentioned yet, but they provide horse therapy. And I think that that's been real impactful. It's an undisclosed location, but if they are threatened, if somebody does find out where the person is, then they have connections with other therapy places through the country where they can, they've got a reciprocity where they can send them to keep them safe. I think that it's a public health issue, and this was a route that we can go that's already established rather than the state starting from ground up and establishing our own. I'm not really big into supporting a private entity, but I think in this case where it's urgently needed, I supported this, and I will today too. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And relating to the issue of will this be an ongoing cost, it may actually be. I think that the idea with the pilot is that they're offering it for 1 year and then the committee can take a look at it and see how they're doing. But anytime you have something of this nature, it can grow, and so their costs and overhead can grow. So I would just want the committee to be open that this may be seen again because it may be successful helping thousands, hundreds of women. Thank you.
Representative Helgerson.
I'm not going to disagree at all with the benefit of the program, but I am going to raise the question. Did they put in an application to the agency, or did this just come through the legislature directly?
It came through the legislature directly to our committee.
Okay. We have a letter from the AG, and as I remember, the AG has funds available for these kind of programs. Why is the AG not using some of those funds for this program?
You'd have to ask him.
I even think the director may even be a constituent, but this is not the way you fund the programs. You get a process in place that you have the proposal put together to some agency or some entity, and then you make some decisions about the value that it's providing to the community. And there are local funds, there have been, and I don't remember if it's state or, not state, but city or county. I just have some real reservations, not the value of the program, but for a committee to make the decisions that this is the appropriate start a new program of $300,000, because it won't be the last time.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to state that we do have a program at home in our area. Serves about 25 women at a time. It's been going on for 7 or 8 years, and the budget is really much lower, but so are the number of women served. And I think it's a need in our state. I kind of agree that maybe came in the wrong way, but I will not vote against it. But I just want you to know there are others in the state. Thank you.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just comment that I indicated we had a very lively discussion about this as well. And perhaps they could have gone through that, but at the time we're doing it, we're talking about a time frame. And they knew, I think, that our budget was being considered and that it was coming up. And I think the extreme need maybe is why maybe I would say this would be an exception. And even though we discussed all of this, and maybe that's how it should have happened, sometimes in social services, people bring us projects that fit in our mission of what we're doing. And based on that, I think we responded, and I still support our program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my understanding is that the director or the board or whoever on this, they're looking at trying to get also funding from the city and county as well. So they're not just coming to us asking, they're looking at all avenues and, trying to leverage dollars wherever they can. So I think this is something we should probably support.
Representative Helgerson.
Okay, I hate to be the meanie, but I've known about this program and different offshoots of this program for the last 5 years. And part of it was in the basement of a church before it went here. If you're willing to start this program, as valuable as it is in Sedgwick County, what about Topeka, Kansas City, and any other places that have available? This is how new state programs, and right now, in looking through the budget, we don't have enough money for everything. Yeah, I'm going to make a motion. I don't know if you want it now or later on this, Mr. Chairman.
Since we're on this topic, and if that motion is pertaining to this particular item, then yes, it's warranted.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I can count the votes, and I think I'm going to lose this one anyway, unless I put it, the words are, we'll agree with the $300,000, but the omnibus should be looking at other funds available rather than SGF. And that language, and Jill can put it together, however, or someone, that this is a one-time appropriation. We're doing it to help the program get started. And if the 6 conferees can figure out if it can come from the AG's budget and some of the grants that they have, I sincerely think that that's more appropriate. But you don't want to start another program, as valuable as it is, or if you do, then start it through the normal process. I make the motion. I don't know if I have a second.
That was a very lengthy motion.
Yeah.
Is there a second on the motion? Seconded by Representative Sutton. Discussion on the motion. Representative Landwehr, do you have a discussion on the motion?
You know, it is, I think, well, and I would actually oppose it. I think as I look into this, and if my research is accurate, we may have more than one of these ranches in Kansas, which is kind of exciting. And when I read what the chairman has put in there, that this is a pilot that will require them to come back and submit their status report detailing the activities, the number of women served, demographics, client service needs at intake, length of services, reasons for case closing, recidivism rate, client costs, et cetera, so that then this legislature can come back at the next go-around and make a decision if this is a program that they want on a state level, and then how would they fund all of them and not just one of them. So it's strictly a pilot for 1 year. And I wouldn't vote to go beyond that until we get this report back from them that gives us this breakdown of exactly what's happening with the money. I think then we also look at the questions we've heard of, let's look at, what are the local communities doing, whether it's the cities or the counties, and then our entrepreneurs that we have across the state in our different communities as well. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I might add, they will take folks from everywhere. And one of the things that we learned in committee was that a lot of times these women, there can be men too, but for the most part, a lot of times they want to get, and they need to get completely out of the area that they were a victim in, just because they know where they live. These folks are, so a lot of times they do trade, they take women in, and they also send women to other organizations that are this clear out of state because of safety factors. So that was kind of a surprising thing that we did learn in committee too. So anyway.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I seconded the motion, but I think I'd like to make a substitute motion just to put a slightly finer point on it. And that would be to, at least temporarily, until we revisit this during omnibus, after we've heard from the AG's office, I think using the Victim Services Division fund for this would be wholly appropriate. And I think that would make the lines a little cleaner as far as who's funding what. So I would make a substitute motion that rather than just saying it comes from the AG's office, that we at least temporarily consider the Victim Services Division fee fund from the AG's office.
So your substitute motion is to have it funded not from SGF, but from the Victim Service Fund?
Correct.
In the Attorney General's office?
Correct.
Seconded by Representative Helgerson for the substitute motion. Discussion on the substitute motion. Representative Wolfmore.
I like this motion much better. I just have a question. Is there money available in that fund?
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the agency for 2021, we have 3.6 million. 2022, it drops to 3.59. So at least for a pilot program, yeah, I think this would be doable.
And I think that's appropriate because we just heard that there's a program in Manhattan and once they hear about that, I'm certain they're going to also want their share
program
of our pie being funded, their program also. So at least this kind of puts it where it belongs. And then it's sort of in the Attorney General's purview to pick out who what should be funded at what time, I think.
Exactly, and I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure we'll hear from the AG's office as to whether they find this appropriate, but I think it's a cleaner spot to park it until omnibus.
Thank you very much.
Representative Williams. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to clarify, is this still a one-year program that is a pilot at this time?
Oh, yeah, my motion
funding?
in no way changes the nature of the program, no.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just get a little clarification since, so you're suggesting it comes out of the victim services instead of SGF?
Correct.
And do we know that that is that just automatically, we vote on it, so yes, it's approved, it will come out of victim services, or is it it may or may not?
Well, I believe the motion is for omnibus.
Right.
So we wouldn't
Park
actually,
it there until omnibus.
I see, okay.
which
Got it.
my preference would be just let's go ahead and fund it out of the Victim Services Fund now and not omnibus. But the reason why I say that is because we kicked a lot of things last year to omnibus,
Right.
and we were never able to
Exactly.
revisit those.
Yes,
And that's why this year I'm a little bit leery about kicking things to omnibus,
Okay.
just because we weren't able to revisit it.
okay, thank you.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of that concern, which I don't think is wholly outrageous, let's go ahead and I'd like to modify my motion, if it's okay with the second, to go ahead and fund it this year from the Victim Services Fund.
And not have it be discussed at omnibus.
Correct.
All right, and then I see approval by the second. So we'll just go ahead and not have this kicked down the road to omnibus. We'll just go ahead and fund it right now from the Victim Services Fund. Representative Estes.
I was unclear to the answer to Representative Humphrey's question of what happens if Victim Services Fund can't fund it.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the fee fund balance, I don't see that as a major issue. Right now, we're sitting at a $3.7 million, even in the out years.
If this committee authorizes the funding of this program through that fund, that is the discretion of the legislature to have it funded from that particular fund.
Thank you. That's the clarification I needed.
We are the appropriators in the state of Kansas. Representative Wolfmore. I think I answered Representative Wolfmore's question. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, I appreciate the spirited debate. We had some in committee also. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it addresses the issue of these women that are trafficked, and I'm fine with this.
All right, any further discussion in regards to the substitute motion that has been modified? Oh, wait, just for clarity, the motion is to have the $300,000 for the pilot program of a one-time money in fiscal year 2022, not from SGF, but from the Victim Service Fund, and to be paid out in the budget. Is that correct, Representative Sutton?
That's how I understood it
All
as
right, you
well.
may move your motion.
I do move my motion.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Any further discussion in regards to fiscal year 2022 for the Department of Children and Families? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just was curious as to why, Representative Carpenter, that we're seeing such a big increase on the for the enforcement fund on child support. Why we have such a big increase in enforcement for child support, 8.8 million. I don't know why. I'm just curious as to why. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want to know why. And if Carlin doesn't show the freaking math, I'm going to go put a sock in. See, if Troy just let the freaking staff get the answer, we wouldn't be sitting here waiting.
Representative, I'm unclear of that. I do know that we have some issues with child support, and they're going to be looking at entirely new child support IT programs and all that kind of stuff for the next couple of years, but I was not aware that it was in this budget.
Representative Landwehr.
Who's the contractor on child support enforcement these days?
Chairman Carpenter.
I think there's 4 or 5, actually.
It used to be Maximus. I don't know who it is now. It used to be Maximus.
Representative Landwehr.
Well, when we first made some of the changes that we did in child support enforcement, I believe that Maximus was, but I don't know who that contractor is today.
I do know they're going out for bids in the next year or so. There was $400,000 to start that was allotted this year, or not allotted, but accepted for reduced resources, which I was concerned, but I dig through this budget, and that's one part of it that I absolutely did not address, so I'll have to get back with you on that, and I apologize.
Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I fully understand that, having actually been in your shoes. So I would just like to get an explanation, a little more clear detail on that there, because it's real easy to overlook some things because of the overwhelming size of other areas of the budget. So thank you, Representative Carpenter.
Any further discussion on fiscal year 2022? All right, seeing none, Representative Carpenter.
Charday was asking me if we wanted to take that entire amount, the recommendation out. So we're going to take that recommendation out of our budget and substitute it with Representative Sutton's motion for the Hope Ranch.
Well, yeah, it was just a modification to.
Just the funding.
Yeah.
We're going to keep all of the rest of
the funding mechanism just changed.
Just changed.
It's not state
right.
general fund.
But all the other
victim service
all that kind of stuff stays in. Okay.
Yes.
All right, very good. I would make a motion to approve the Department of Children and Family budgets for 21 and 22.
As amended.
As amended.
Seconded by Representative Ballard. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Chairman Carpenter.
Committee, you can't put on enough deodorant to survive this.
By that comment, I'm glad you're far away.
Yeah. But that's true. Okay, the overview starts on page 37, volume 1. Let's get this show on the road.
137. Correct?
What's that?
Page 137.
137, I'm sorry. Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services is established by statute in 1977 as a cabinet-level agency known as the Department of Aging until 2012, headed by a secretary appointed by the governor, subject to confirmation by the Senate. The agency's goals were to promote security, dignity, independence in older adults and persons with disabilities. KDADS is responsible for Medicaid long-term care payments, survey and certification of adult care homes, behavioral health programs, home and community-based services for older adults and persons with disability, and the management and oversight of 4 state hospitals. The department is mandated under the Older Americans Act to serve as the advocate for seniors and administer programs funded by the Older Americans Act. Okay. The agency requests a revised estimate of $2.2 billion, including $835 million from the State General Fund for operating expenditures for 2021. This is an all-funds increase of $75 million above the 2021 approved amount. This includes an SGF decrease of $44 million and other funds increases of $120 million, or the 9.5% from the 2021 approved amount. The revised estimate includes 285 FTE positions, which is an increase of 3 FTE positions above the approved number. The increase is primarily related to one-time expenditures of COVID-19 related federal relief funds and the establishment of the electronic health records system for the state hospitals. In addition to these one-time expenditures are expenses related to the implementation of several CanCare initiatives, including the administrative case management program, the funding for brain injuries, the BI waiver services, all of which are anticipated to continue in the future. It is related to funding sources. The agency received additional federal funds relating from temporary increase in federal medical assistance percentage FMAP rate due to the COVID-19. This allows the agency to reduce its utilization on the SGF required to draw down federal Medicaid monies. The revised estimate includes $18.5 million. You can find that on page 197 in the KDAD's budget. All from state building institution funds for capital improvement expenditures for 2021. This is an increase of $4.4 million or 31% above the approved amount. These include several rehabilitation and remodeling projects at the state hospitals, as well as debt service for the state security hospital and previous rehabilitation projects. The increase is primarily related to the delay of several projects from 2020. The governor recommends $2.3 billion, including $733 million SGF for the operating expenditures for 2021. This is an all funds increase of $106 million or 4.8% above the agency's 2021 revised estimate. This includes an SGF decrease of $102 million or 12% above and an other all funds increase of $208.6 million or 15% above the agency's 2021 revised estimate. This increase is primarily related to the additional awards of federal coronavirus relief monies by the Sparks Task Force for personal protective equipment and sanitation supplies for the nursing facilities. The increase is also due to additional expenditures related to the CanCare expenditures for entitlement programs, which primarily related to the Medicaid population growth, and a new agency policy related to the psychiatric residential treatment facility reimbursement, PRTFs. The fluctuation in funding sources is due to the governor's recommendation that the agency utilize special revenue funds rather than SGF monies for mental health grants and programs. The recommendation includes 285 FTE positions, which is the same number that the agency requested in 2021. The governor concurs with the agency's revised 2020 estimates for capital improvements found on page 136 of $100,000. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2021 with the following adjustments and notations. Add $22 million, including $7.9 from SGF to provide a 5.5% increase in provider reimbursement rates for the Medicaid home and community-based services and intellectual developmental disability HCBS ID waiver for 2021. Add $49.8 million, including $19.9 million SGF to provide a $20 increase for the daily reimbursement rates for nursing facilities for 178 days in 2021. This recommendation is to continue the daily rate increase provided due to the COVID-19 pandemic for the remainder of 2020. Add $33.6 million, including $13.4 SGF to provide a $20 increase in the daily reimbursement rates for nursing facilities for 120 days starting January 1st, 2021. Add language making this subject to review by the Legislative Budget Committee at the end of the 120 days or May 1st, 2021 for continuation through June of 2021. This recommendation is to continue the daily rate increase provided due to the COVID-19 pandemic for the remainder of the fiscal year. Add $4.2 million, including $1.7 SGF to provide a $10 increase in daily reimbursement rates for nursing facilities for 30 days following the end of the COVID-19 public emergency in 2021. The Budget Committee recommends that the agency review policies regarding the Medicaid home and community-based brain injury waiver in 2021 and implement the following policies. Ensure that the HCBS BI waiver serves as a rehabilitation waiver. Prioritize Kansas with recent brain injuries. Implement a 2-year review of services with limited exceptions for continuing waiver services beyond 2 years. Add language that the agency report the following information to the Bob Bethel Joint Committee on Home and Community-Based Services on a quarterly basis beginning in 2021. Number of enrolled members in the HCBS brain injury waiver. At the end of the month prior to the committee meeting, number of enrolled members in the brain injury waiver over the course of the calendar year, unduplicated count. Brain injury waiver enrollees receiving HCBS BI waiver services longer than 2 years, longer than 4 years. The number of brain injury enrollees who did not receive HCBS waiver services within 60 days after being enrolled, 90 days after being enrolled, and 120 days after being enrolled. Number of brain injury enrollees who did not receive a specific HCBS brain injury waiver service for the following periods prior to the date they were officially enrolled in the brain injury: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. The amount is per member per month, enhanced dollar rate provided in the managed care organizations for each member enrolled in the HCBS brain injury waiver. The total number enrolled in the HCBS brain injury waiver by county per capita enrollment and the HCBS brain injury by county and progress towards new policy implementations. The Budget Committee notes its concern about the individuals receiving brain injury long-term services on the Medicaid home and community-based services brain injury waiver may hinder its goal of rehabilitating injuries with brain injury. What I may say on that, well, we'll just stop for questions right there. Okay.
All right, thank you, Chairman Carpenter. In regards to some of the recommendations, aside from number 5, were any of those items subject to the governor's allotment made effective July 1?
Yes, they were. Let me back up just for a second, because on the governor's recommendation, oh, never mind. Okay. Yes, number 1 was allotted.
Item number 1.
What's that?
Just item number 1.
Yes, item number 1 was allotted in last July.
And then could you kind of break down 2, 3, and 4 as far as the time frame and the rationale behind the different phases of those increases?
Well, this ask is for all of 2021 going to the end of the year. 178 days goes from the end that they received the additional 120 days last year in the initial set of COVID response. This takes it to the end of the year and adds $20 a day. For that, it also takes from this year forward to May 1st of a $20 a day increase, and then $10 a day whenever the pandemic ends. That's that in a nutshell. The committee has had extensive testimony about how fragile our nursing homes are after this COVID-19. 80% is pretty much the break even on nursing homes. Our nursing homes right now are at 69%. They are hemorrhaging dollars. People are staying at home. They're not expected to until, I'm not sure when this goes away or whatever. Folks aren't comfortable with going to a nursing home, and that's just kind of a common sense deal. So this is to hopefully get them through that. And, we had 22 nursing homes in the last few years in receivership. And we were able, it didn't cost us a lot at that point in time because they have a civil monetary penalty fund that they, whenever anybody in a nursing home is fined for noncompliance and all kinds of things like that, that fine, that money goes into a fund. So that fund, that receivership cost us of those 21 nursing homes cost us $8 million. 3.6 million of that was out of SGF, and the rest of it was funded by the CMP fund. So we pay $197 a day, $78 of that state funded, 118 is federally funded.
Did the nursing homes and also assisted living homes receive federal money?
They did. And the majority of that went for testing and PPE and that kind of stuff. They received 81, well, the department, the nursing facilities received 33.7 million for PPE and testing and that kind of stuff from the Sparks Committee.
So the nursing care facilities did, but assisted living did not?
That's the way I understand it.
Right.
Now, the old adult care homes received 18.9 million from the Sparks Committee.
Okay. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So they didn't receive the $20 increase for federal.
No.
They didn't receive any money for the.
It was 120 days starting, I'm not even sure when it started, but when the pandemic started, when we got the federal money, it was there was 120 days of increased at $20 a day.
Oh, okay, that they got. And this would continue that.
Right.
So did you look at any of the money that's like that just got passed or that we know is going to probably be passed this next week? Anywhere in that, is there any money coming for anything like this?
I would not be surprised if there isn't, but at this point in time, we're just not aware of anything.
Okay. So still the majority of it, majority of the increase will still be paid with federal funds.
Correct. At the 65% FMAP.
Well, okay, what if isn't the FMAP changing though? Probably.
Well, there's, I hate to make.
Well, I know, but it sounds
FMAP,
like it's going to.
It is. In the new federal bill they're voting on, as a matter of fact, right now, the way it reads is the FMAP is going up to 75%. And that money will not be able to supplant SGF. So and it's projected by KDHE, yesterday's figures were it would bring in about $60 million to the state.
But that would change these numbers.
It would.
Okay.
No doubt. I mean, I'm dealing in like real time.
Right, I understand.
That's in the
but
future,
that,
and
but
I
that
don't
is a
even
very
know
big
if it'll
possibility
happen.
it'll change these
It's very
numbers.
possible.
Okay.
It's very possible. And committee, I might mention too, I've been looking for a way to segue into this, but we've received and we've identified $319 million worth of savings in SGF through the increase in the FMAP by 6.2%. You got to believe that the feds did not intend that to go to backfill states' budgets, that they really expected that to send that out for the increased cost of nursing homes, mental health facilities. We have 55,000 more people on Medicaid right now than we had a year ago. We can't kick them off because the eligibility is suspended by taking that 6.5, the increase of 6.2%. So we cannot kick these people off. I maintain that I have no idea how long, and the eligibility date is for 1 year from whenever they apply. If it stopped today, you know, and the 55,000 weren't eligible, and that's saying that they weren't, it would take us a complete year to do eligibility and make sure that they weren't on by the time. So there is a huge bill out there in just in that. And I'm very concerned about that. I have no idea. Let's just say half of them are going to be kicked off. Well, we're going to owe for those people for that time frame when the 6.5, if it does end after that. Now, this new 7.5, whole different set of circumstances. I have no idea where that's going to go.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So help me understand, the number 2 just continues and finishes 2020.
Right, correct.
And then number 3 gets us to the end of fiscal year 21.
No, not till the end, just May 1st.
Just to May 1st of fiscal year 21.
Just to May 1st. It just starts at the end of the year and goes to May 1st.
Okay.
And then the other one is $10 a day for the next 30 days after that.
After May 1st? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And kind of along with where Representative Hoffman was taking this, Representative Carpenter, is, so then are we to believe that you take the 20 from item 2, plus the 20 from item 3, plus the 10 from item 4? Is it a cumulative? Or you're just stating that it will be 20, 20, and 10, which means a drop in the third year out?
Yeah. Well, the number 4 is just for $10 a day, and that's only for 30 days.
Chairman Carpenter, could you please speak in the mic?
Sorry. Number 4 is just for $10 a day, and that's just 30 days following the end of the pandemic.
Okay, but all right, so item 2, you've got $20.
Mm-hmm.
Then are you adding $20 in 3, or you're just continuing the $20?
No, correct. We're just continuing.
Just continue, okay, that was my point.
I guess from the time that the $120 ended last whenever,
Right.
we would finish up 2020, and we would go till May 1st of this year
Right.
at
So it doesn't-
$20. No compounding whatsoever.
Right, that was what I was trying to get at. One of the things that I might add, Mr. Chairman, in that we had during the Care Oversight Committee is that the nursing homes ran into a lot of problems of getting their PPE. They didn't have enough PPE. They didn't have the testing equipment. They didn't have the testing supplies that they needed to do testing. They were required at certain numbers of times a week to test all of their employees, except for nursing home inspectors. They didn't have to be. And if a contractor came into the nursing home, they had to be inspected. So they were dealing with staff shortage. We were given a letter where the agency was letting nursing homes or encouraging nursing homes to take COVID patients. I think we all know how well that worked out with New York, and we're still not sure if this isn't what caused some of the clusters that we had in our nursing homes, because that's some of the largest clusters that we had across the state. We still have one nursing home in receivership from our last major fiasco. We do know that the agency is in at least 2, possibly going into a 3rd home, monitoring their finances right now because they're concerned of them going upside down. And this was a big discussion in the Care Oversight, is if we start losing our nursing homes and we don't take care of them out there, where is mom and dad going to go? Where's grandma and grandpa going to go? And the nursing homes are primarily funded with Medicaid clients. The reason that you don't have the assisted living is private pay. Those are not Medicaid beds.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I might add, with your permission.
Go ahead.
We figured this at 14,000, which is, we're not occupied at 14,000 right now. January of 2021, the occupancy rate was 14,430. Right now, January of 2021 It was 69, it was 12,431. So this won't be as large a fiscal note, but that's what KDAD's reported on the CanCare Oversight Committee meeting that we had on Monday. It was 14,000, or what was last Friday? Last Friday, there was 14,000, but in fact, now the occupancy is down to 69%, 12,431. So if you multiply that out, it'll drop it by, 1,700.
Representative Landwehr, did you have any further questions or comments?
Well, and I appreciate Representative Carpenter, coming in with the decrease in numbers, but that's a fluctuating number all the time. So that 14 could be up there, within the next 30 days. We just don't know. And everyone thinks that only people that are 65 plus are in nursing homes. Well, they're not. Some people are put there because they are Medicaid and they need some assistance that goes beyond some of the rehab facilities, et cetera. So, and Kansas is a graying state. This is not going to go down and decrease things, but we have not done the right thing by the clients in the nursing homes, nor the staff in nursing homes. And keep in mind, in the bill that we passed during the special session, did not give them any relief from liability for COVID like we did with other businesses. And right now, in my conversations with some of the litigating attorneys involved in this, there are lawsuits being filed right now, and we're going to watch these homes go under. And it's they either go under and they go away, or the state's going to take them over. And you have to ask yourself, what's that going to cost them? We have got to make some decisions on this and be strong when we come in with our decisions.
And I think that is another factor. As I've visited with nursing homes, Zoom calls and all kinds of stuff, their average cost of their insurance is going up 25%, and which should surprise nobody. I mean, the insurance companies are certainly going to, with no liability protection, they're certainly going to figure that into their cost of doing business.
Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Landwehr stole a little bit of my thunder there right at the very end. Thank you. But the reality is, in the special session, we did fail to provide them with the protection that every other healthcare provider gets, which has led to some significant fragility in their financial situation. We do have the opportunity, or will have the opportunity, to rectify that, I'm happy to say, next week with a bill that passed out of judiciary that would address that concern. However, we know how those things work retroactively, and that's not so well. So with that in mind, in echoing her sentiments, I think we've had many conversation about what horrible parents the state makes to our youth. I certainly don't want to apply that horrible parenting to our parents and grandparents in the event our nursing homes go under. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm following you on 2 and 3, but on number 4, so the $10 a day increase is whatever date the public health emergency expires. So if it expires in December, it could even go into the next year, or?
Right, correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just to kind of not just drop off the funding at that time, I still think it's, folks just aren't going to come back immediately. It's going to be a period of time. Quite frankly, I hope this is enough to fix it, and believe me, I wore my padded underwear today because I knew I was going to be dealing with this.
It might be too much information.
It might be. But we need to laugh around here once in a while. But the fact of the matter is, I know this is a big ask, and I have lost sleep over this. But nevertheless, no matter what we do here or not, it's not going to take away the problem. Whether we give them one dime or whatever, we're still going to be dealing with this. So that's what I'll say.
Representative Ballard.
I don't need to say anything. No, I can't talk that.
Representative Hoffman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not, hear me out before I start getting screamed at here. So just, number 3, yeah. Would there be any appetite, I guess, from the committee to change number 3 to $10. If we're going to continue, or if they're going to eventually, that whole $10 or that whole $20 is going to go away, that's starts the step. I'm just throwing it out if.
So you're talking about decreasing number 3 to $10 instead of $20?
Yeah.
It's the will of the committee. I think this is a big ask. I don't have a clue. I don't have a crystal ball to know. I know what I know at this point in time. I know what I've done, heard, and many of us around this table have heard from our local nursing homes. And, we'll just do what we can do.
Okay. Representative Helgerson.
I'll put that question on pause for just a second and ask, we have an agreement with the feds about budget neutrality. You're putting in about overall $70, $80 million of state general fund dollars, it looks like, over 2 years. Did you run this by the agency and how this will mesh with our federal agreement about budget neutrality?
Chairman Carpenter.
I did not. We had a huge conversation about budget neutrality in CanCare oversight last week. There are a lot of concerns. We have a $375 million discrepancy in what CMS thinks that we have room for and what we think we have room for. And Director Fertig at that time made us aware that we have to keep an eye on budget neutrality.
Can you go on a little bit, explain a little bit more what the ramifications of that would be, or is it that we're just kind of pushing the limit as the amount of money we can spend?
We are, at least until that $375 million decision is made.
And when will that decision be made?
We don't know. Some of the other folks on CanCare oversight, do you remember what she said about that? She went to she visited with some of the folks at CMS, and she said it was pretty positive. And then we're getting a new administration, but I don't remember the details of that.
Representative Helgerson, do you have any additional comments?
I understand the concern of putting in the additional money because of concerns about nursing homes, because how do we take care of the Medicaid population that we have? But it sure is helpful if we have the agency sign off on this kind of an appropriation and this amount before we put the money in.
He's wrong.
Whether or not we cut back $10 or from the 20,
Yeah,
they need to guide us because we have some contractual agreements with the feds, as you're alluding to, and I just don't know what this does to us with our agreement with the feds.
Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is more on the waiver side, that we look at the budget neutrality, but not on provider payment rates do not figure into the budget neutrality argument at all. So it's like when we're looking at making an adjustment to our 1115 waiver, which is our agreement with the government, with the federal government, that's where we have to come in with budget neutrality. That's like the program we're looking at with the CCBHCs. There's going to be some budget neutralities in that because there's pieces of that to the 1115 waiver change in our contract with the feds. But on these payments here, with reimbursement rates has nothing to do with the budget neutrality.
Representative Helgerson.
My information is somewhat different, but it raises the question, anytime you're putting in this kind of funds, you need to be very sure about what the agency believes. And that, I feel where this is going, but somebody needs to make sure that we get a letter from the agency saying this won't mess us up with the feds.
Representative Ballard.
I think I think she has covered that, because I was always under the impression that it was due to management and our waivers and not with this. But we did not specifically ask. We specifically asked about protective income levels and all of that, but we didn't specifically get an answer on this. But I was never under the impression that it would go into nursing homes. But maybe we do need that answer.
Any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is an important issue, and I don't know the answer. I sent a text or an email to ask if this touches our budget neutrality under 1115 waiver. I don't know that it does either, but I'm not sure. I quite frankly don't know what to do till we hear about that to know if this is a real issue.
Representative Kikanen.
Mr. Chairman, didn't I ask that in committee? And I got some responses, but I can't find them.
Chairman Carpenter.
But what I received back was that it does not.
Now, that may have been the protected income limit, which is what we
Gotcha.
dealt with.
Okay, yep.
Just
I apologize, it's a different topic.
yesterday or the day before. Well,
Representative Wolfmore.
I can't attest to the accuracy of this, but I just got a text that says provider payment rates do not figure into the budget neutrality argument. So.
that was from Director Fertig?
No,
Okay.
I haven't heard from her yet.
Okay. Well, I
Nursing
just,
home, executive.
I just texted her and I haven't gotten an answer back yet, but.
All right, any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Seeing none? Looks like Chairman Carpenter is getting additional information. Chairman Carpenter?
Yes, and I also have to, on item number 5, this item also intersects with KDHE on the brain injury waiver. So some of that will be provided, the information will need to be provided by KDHE. So I just need to put that in the minutes that it will intersect with KDHE.
Okay. We can make that addition to the minutes. Is that okay with the committee to have that addition? Could you restate that, Chairman Carpenter?
Yes. On item number 5, dealing with community-based, home and community-based brain injury HCBI waiver, that also intersects with KDHE. So some of these items that we're asking for in here for the enrolled members and the information will also come out of KDHE.
Why don't you make a motion to have that language added?
I would make a motion that we add KDHE to the list on number 5, the brain injury waiver.
Okay, is there a second to have that added? A second by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the additional language? Seeing none, Chairman Carpenter, you may move your motion.
I move.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are you saying, Representative Carpenter, that the funding that's needed on the potential waiting list we might have is in KDHE or in this budget?
No, I'm not saying anything about the funding. I'm just saying about the actual items that are in there that we're looking for as far as tracking the brain waiver.
But is the money in this one or?
It's in this one.
Okay, so did you add money for this year? Because my understanding was they're going to be short. Okay,
Yeah, I understand that they
for
are.
21?
And I guess we can go into the brain waiver part of it if you want to discuss that, or.
Go on and move on to that.
I think it's 2 amendments. I think.
Let me see if I can find my.
that $20 is going to end in fiscal '21. It's not in '22. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
What did I do with that? Yeah, here it is. Okay. All right.
See, I think that was that. Remember, we did 3. They did
In,
one, and we with one last year, and then she allotted, I think. Yeah.
in 2018, the legislative direction expanded the eligibility to brain injury waivers. And they expanded that to include gunshot wounds, motor vehicle crashes, assaults or falling or striking your head, strokes, and cerebrovascular accidents, and injuries resulting to the loss of oxygen to the brain. Those are now covered under this brain injury. Well, this is one of those classic programs that this has grown. In 2018, it was 515. In year-to-date in 2021, it's 739. It's expensive, and they're up against the budget. I thought we had some more time because, but I understand now that as of May 1st, we'll have a wait list on the brain injury list because of funding. And what I'll say about this is the brain injury waiver is only good if there's no wait list. It is about that early treatment of a person that if they don't get it early, you might as well just move them out into a nursing home or ID benefits or something like that, because you've got 1 to 2 years, and if you don't get them very quickly and they don't get the services and the rehabilitation and the therapy they need, after that, every day, it diminishes the effectiveness of the waiver. So with that, it's not good to have a wait list on brain injury, the waiver. It's that simple. With that, and because of my asks on all the rest of this stuff, the agency did, I will tell you, Representative Helgerson, they did ask for $4 million SGF, $8 million all funds, and the governor did not include that in her budget. So I've had several people ask me, and I thought I had a big enough ask the way it was. That'd be over the top. Doesn't mean that the problem still isn't there, but that's where I'm at on that. We have all kinds of stats talking about that. I agree 100%, but anyway, so now you know.
Representative Ballard.
Clarification, Chairman and I briefly talked about this morning, and he said he had no objection to it, so you asking?
I do not have any objection. I just.
So if that were the case,
Is your mic on?
if that was the case, you know, that's why we heard it would be May 1st, that waiting list would be there. And I'm going to concur with what he said. You know, this is the only waiver actually we have, well, there may be one other, that if you get your care early, you can come off, you're productive, and you don't generally go back on again. But the longer you wait, the harder it is for you to come off. So if that was the case in May 1st, that says that we actually have 2 months in 21 that we may have to fund, and then fully fund the rest in 22 so that it is covered. I don't know if you've been receiving a lot of emails, but we've been really getting them, and phone calls, and people really worried about it, because it was like they're thinking because we added acquired to the basic list. And we thought, well, maybe it was young people really coming on. What we found out that larger population is 55 plus, and that could be due to strokes and other kinds of things that they need to have the traumatic brain injury as well. So I was going to propose this in 22, But I think it is vital that we do this, because if we get a waiting list, it just defeats the whole purpose of having this particular waiver.
Got a motion, Representative Ballard?
Yes, that would be a motion that we fund the 2 months in '21, and then I'll make that again for 2022.
Seconded by Representative Landwehr. Discussion on the motion. Can you restate the motion, Representative Ballard?
This motion would be to increase 2 months of funding for 2021 of the brain waiver.
Do you have an estimation of what that would be total?
Oh, gosh, I wish I did. Oh, gosh.
What did you propose?
Well, I was going to propose, 1.5, but I didn't want to put a figure on it because we really didn't figure out, because I was going to move into 2022, but that those 2 months would be left once we found out it's May 1st. So I don't know, would Matthew have that figure, how we would figure?
And that would come from State General Fund.
That was yes, it would.
Is that not, there's no Medicaid money that covers that?
Okay, while he's looking that up, Representative Hoffman has a question on the motion.
So there's no Medicaid match or anything with that? It's all SGF?
Well, it would be matched by
okay.
Medicaid, right,
Okay.
at the 65.
Yeah, because
Yeah, 1 million SGF would bring down,
The same FMAP?
yeah, same
okay.
FMAP
All
with
right, that's what
65%,
yeah.
correct.
So, and I think that probably with all the recommendations you had in that in number 5, this is probably part. Do we have data showing, and I'm sure there is, I'm sure that it is helping, but do we have data showing the number of people that have received it, that have been able to come off of it, and how it's helped them, or is?
yes, we don't.
Representative Ballard?
Thank you. We don't have it right now, but yes, we can give you that, because that's the beauty, I think, of this particular waiver, because they know who comes off. They can even tell you where they're working, or if they have had a setback and had to come back on, or who's on for 2 years, who's on for 4 years.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
all
that's
of that.
great.
That data is there, Now, I know more about this one than I do on the others, because this one is so important if we want them to get off and become productive citizens.
Great, okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Representative Landwehr.
Well, just to add a little bit of information to that is that one of the things is that when we had limits on age and the type of brain injury waiver for years until back about, I want to say 17 or 18 is when we expanded that. And so now we're picking up 55-plus stroke victims. And then there's also been the expansion of services in other communities. So that's why you're starting to see this increase on it. But you can say, all right, we either spend the money now or we're going to have them on long-term care for Medicaid expenses probably the rest of their lives.
Representative Ballard.
Mr. Chairman, and I don't know what he figured it out, but I am just thinking that, okay, the Senate put in $1 million, that if we put in $1 million, it would probably cover those 2 months that we need in 2021. Now, of course, if we don't use all of that money, it'll roll back over, but I think that would cover it.
So do you want to modify your motion to say $1 million for the
Yes.
2 months?
If you allow me to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I would.
I'll allow it if that's all right with the second. Representative Landwehr?
Are you okay with the million?
Yes.
All right, it's okay with the second. So the modified motion is that it'd be up to $1 million from State General Fund for 2 months of fiscal year 2021.
Yes.
Any further discussion in regards to the motion? Seeing none, Representative Ballard, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Representative Landwehr? Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, I did get a text from our Medicaid director, and Chairman Carpenter might have gotten the same thing, but what she said is any changes to Medicaid provider rates, even if it's a KDADS item like HCBS waivers and nursing facilities, does affect budget neutrality. So just wanted to share that for the good of the committee. Thank you.
And that is something that we're going to be working on, because actually research has been texting me as well that they're looking into that to see whether or not it does affect budget neutrality. So obviously when this committee comes back and we start working on the budget, we will have information, and so we can make adjustments then. So they're just trying to, get the details of whether or not that would affect it or not.
Right.
And so we'll have that information when we're actually putting the budget back together, hopefully in the week of March 15th.
And I did get a text from Director Frutig also that confirms that it does affect our budget neutrality. I think we don't know what our budget neutrality is right now because of the $375 million discrepancy that we have from several years ago.
All right, committee, any further discussion on fiscal year 2021? Seeing none, Chairman Carpenter, you may move on to fiscal year 2022.
The agency requests $2.2 billion, including $884 million from the State General Fund for operating expenditures for 2022. This is an all funds decrease of $11 million, or 5.5% below the 2021 estimates. This includes an SGF increase of $49.2 million, or 5.9%, an all funds decrease of $60 million from the FYI 2021 revised estimate. This request includes 285 FTEs, which is the same number in 2021. The decrease is primarily related to the absence of several one-time expenditures in FY21 for COVID-related pandemic relief and the infrastructure of electronic health record system. This decrease is partially offset by the agency's enhancement requests, which include maintenance of its EHR system, funding of the HCBS waiver services related to avoiding waitlist growth, or the establishment for the physical disability, intellectually disability, developmentally disabled, the ID waiver, and the brain injury waiver, and several new behavioral health initiatives. Due to the expiration of the temporary federal FMAP percentage increase, the agency anticipates increased SGF expenditures. The agency requests $9.1 million, all from the state buildings funds, which you can find on page 197. For 2022, this request is a reduction of $9.4 million, or 50% below the 2021 revised estimate. This request includes several rehabilitation and remodeling projects for the state hospitals, as well as debt service for the state security hospital and previous rehabilitation projects. The governor recommends all expenditures be shifted to the budget of the newly created Department of Human Services pursuant to Executive Order 47, which combines the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services with the Department of Children and Families for 2022. For the purpose of this summer, the governor's recommendations for 2022 services are included in the budget of the Department of Children and Family for 2022. I do have a paper here somewhere. This is how it should read. Absent the ERO, the governor recommends $2.4 billion, including $910.3 million from the SGF from operating expenditures for 2022. This is an all funds increase of $147 million, or 6.6% above the agency's request for 2022. This includes an SGF increase of $26 million, or 2.9%, and an all other funds increase of $121 million, or 9.1% above the agency's request. The increases are primarily attributable to fluctuations in the human services consensus caseloads, largely due to increasing Medicaid population. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government increased the rate it used to determine state match funds in order to draw down federal money. To receive the increased match rate, the state must refrain from moving people from its Medicaid program. As a result, the population of individuals eligible for mental health-related Medicaid expenditures will continue to grow until the agency can resume termination of this enrollment when a person no longer meets the eligibility criteria. In addition, the increases include the governor's recommendation for several of the enhancement requests related to outdated technology in the state hospitals, mental health-related services, housing-related programs. Offsetting the increase or decreases related to the governor not recommending additional funding for the agency's enhancement request regarding additional funding for PD, ID, and BI waivers, as well as the adoption of 2 of the agency's reduced resources. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendations for 22 with the following adjustments. Add $22 million, including 7.9 SGF to continue the 5% increase for the provider reimbursement rates for the Medicaid home and community-based services, ID and DD, HCBS waiver. Add $21.9 million or $21.8 million, including 8.7 SGF from the Medicaid home and community-based waivers, TA waiver for 2022. Add language directing the funding be used to increase the provider reimbursement rates for the specialized medical care T1000 services code from the current rate of $31.55 to $47 per hour for in-home Medicaid care registered licensed nurses, registered nurses and licensed practical nurse services for this waiver. Add $1 million all from SGF for a psychiatric residential treatment facility pilot program at Ember Hope in Newton, Kansas for 2022. This funding would be used for 12 PRTF beds. Add $20.5 million, including 8.2 SGF from the 3% increase of Medicaid reimbursements for nursing facilities for 2022. Add $3.3 million, all from SGF for the Senior Care Act for 2022. The Senior Care Act is a program that offers Kansas 68 years and older the opportunity to receive in-home care, non-medical supports to prevent premature nursing home placements for persons who have not exhausted their financial resources. At $394,000, including $159,000 SGF, to add the language raising the protected income limit for the PACE program from 150% to 300% for 2022. The Budget Committee notes its intent is for annual adjustments at this level in the future. Add $2 million all SGF for community mental health center grants for 2022. Add $750,000 all from SGF for the Douglas County Crisis Center and appropriate a new Douglas County Crisis Center base services account for SGF in 2022. The Budget Committee recommends that the PACE program expenditures be included in Human Services caseloads process beginning in 2021. The language directing the agency to initiate a request for proposals for the PACE program statewide. Add language directing the agency to establish a process of certification and funding for certified community behavioral health clinics in 2022. The Budget Committee recommends the Legislative Coordinating Council establish a special interim committee to study the state of the home and community-based waiver services intellectual and developmental disability waiver during the 2021 interim. The focus of the committee would be to examine issues related to the waiver wait list, provide adequate provider networks and reimbursement rates. The Budget Committee recommends the House Social Services Budget Committee review the agency's progress in addressing the Budget Committee's concerns regarding the number of individuals receiving Medicaid home and community-based services brain injury waiver services and the rehabilitation goal of the HCBS BI waiver services during the 2022 legislative session. Should the concerns remain unaddressed, the committee would recommend expenditures for the HCBS brain injury services be included in the Human Services consensus caseload process beginning in the fall of 22. Should the HCBS brain injury services be included in consensus caseloads estimates, the estimates would include expenditures for all HCBS waiver enrollees, which will not allow the waiver to have a waiting list. That's all.
You're complete, okay. I was just waiting. You didn't say that you were available for questions, so I was just.
I did. Yes, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. The first question that I have is in regards to item number 1, which is the same thing that we saw in fiscal year 2021 in regards to the reimbursement rates for the community-based services, intellectual developmental disability.
Correct.
The amount is the same for fiscal year 21, so I hate to back up and discuss that. We have pretty much, when we put the budget together, we're going to have 4 or 3 months left in fiscal year 2021. So what was the rationale of the committee to having the full amount that was, and this was allotted by the governor for fiscal year 2021, but when this budget passes, we're only going to have a few months left in fiscal year 2021.
And I don't disagree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the key to that is that they expected that money all year long from the 1st of July.
But they've been operating
They
since
have.
the allotment.
And they've been getting by. And so I understand where you're coming from. We received testimony from these folks. They have 50% turnover. They can't compete with McDonald's and Walmart and all this kind of stuff. Their budgets are 80, 90% wages, and they just don't have the money. But I don't disagree with you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
completely agree with that.
But my thinking was that, yeah, they should have had this money all year. It was allotted, and you're exactly right.
I would say due to the allotment that took effect July 1st,
so they never.
we're only going to have 3 or 4 months left in fiscal year 2021. So by my calculations, it would be, if you schedule that out on how much it costs per month, and then with I took it with 4 months remaining in fiscal year 2021, that would reduce in fiscal year 2021 the 22.1 million to 7.37 million. All funds, and 2.6 million SGF to address the remaining months in fiscal year 21. And then in fiscal year 2022, we fully fund it as proposed by the Budget Committee.
Is that your motion?
Yeah, thank you. I'll make a motion to basically step that back in fiscal year 2021 because we only have a few months remaining in that fiscal year. And this would fund it from whenever we do the budget to June 30th. And then on July 1, we accept the Budget Committee recommendation in fiscal year 2022 that'll take effect on July 1st. Is there a second by Representative Carpenter?
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion? Representative Landwehr.
This impacts people's lives. And when they started their fiscal year in July, they did not plan on being cut $22 million in the fall. So they're trying to operate with the way that they planned for that $22 million to be there. And now we're saying a group of individuals that we're responsible for, and they are some of the toughest to take care of. To reduce that money and not make them whole when we've got other budgets out there that are whole, I think is totally wrong. These are individuals' lives. And if this committee would take the time someday to extend the time for them to come in and tell some of the stories, it's pretty scary when you're a caseworker and your client has gone off and you're watching an officer possibly prepare to shoot that individual in order to get them under control. It's labor heavy, stressful, labor intensive. And they have not seen increases in many, many years. So they should be made whole. They should be made whole for next year as well. So I would oppose this motion.
And I'm not disputing that fact. I'm just using pure math. I mean, this was allotted on when the budget took effect on July 1st, and we only have 4 months left in the fiscal year. And they've been operating for the remaining 8 months based off of the allotment. And my motion is to completely fund it in fiscal year 2022. I'm just using a scheduling of what we have left in fiscal year 2021. Representative Landwehr.
When did the allotments actually occur? Did they occur on July 1? Or were
They
those
took effect July 1 when the
No,
budget.
when did she actually do the allotments, Mr. Chairman?
We
What
were
month?
notified of the allotments, I believe it was the June 27th meeting in the State Finance Council.
She didn't do those in the fall.
I think they took effect
No,
in
they
July.
were immediate.
They were immediate when the budget took effect on July 1. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I move my motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, and I'd like to be recorded. Representative Landwehr would like to have her vote recorded as a no vote. What about WebEx?
I'm sure they'll be grateful for any funding. They have not had any funding for a long time.
All right, the motion passes. I just want to make that clear for the record for the minutes. Chairman Carpenter.
I have just a few more things to go through before the questions start. On number 2, the TA waiver, that was in the budget last year at a reduced amount, so it was partially allotted. Number 3 was in the budget last year and was allotted entirely. Number 4 was allotted last year. This is for the nursing homes, and it was a 1% of 2.6 million SGF, and then all funds last year. So this is a 3%, so a third of this was allotted last year. The Senior Care Act money, number 5, was allotted last year. Number 6 is a new item. Number 7 was allotted last year. And number 8, these were all in the budget. Number 8 was also allotted last year. So these are just replacement fund, the funding that was in our budget last year. Not our budget, but the
overall state budget.
The overall state budget.
All right, committee, any questions for Chairman Carpenter in regards to fiscal year 2022? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you. Representative Carpenter, on item 8, are all the other crisis centers line items?
They are.
All right, thank you.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line item, or on recommendation number 9, the PACE program expenditures to be included in the Human Services Consensus caseloads process. Isn't that already the case, or is that no longer the case?
It's no longer the case. It was the case when PACE was started, and then we've not gotten any kind of explanation as to why they were dropped out of the caseloads, but they're no longer in caseloads.
Well, that answered my follow-up question. Why on earth? Who would have done such a thing?
And that's a great deal to, let's see if I can find my information on the PACE program, but basically the PACE program is a money-saving program, and that's kind of why it's in here, is they save overall 10%. They keep folks from being out of nursing homes, but they save overall 10%. There's 725 folks right now on PACE in the state. One of the recommendations was to have the department go out for RFPs to try to expand that program. And let's see what else about PACE. It's very labor intensive. I've got a sheet around here somewhere. I have no idea. I have too much junk here. Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. One of the things we found with the PACE program was because the protected income limit is at 1177, a lot of these folks, if you make over 1177, any of that money you return to the MCOs. And so one of the biggest barriers for the PACE program for people to get involved in the PACE program was they had to return any of that money. And it could have been, if you, for instance, if you received $2,500 worth of income, anything over that 1177, you would pay that difference back to the MCOs. Well, a lot of people just could not get involved in that program because of that. And you know, you can't necessarily blame them, because if they're having to live on that, they can't get involved in a program that actually saves us money. So one of the proposals, that proposal is, in fact, raising, which we do have permission from the department on this, believe it or not, to raise the 300%, the PACE program, that we can raise the PACE program, just the protected income limit for PACE program folks to 300%. It is that very small amount. It only affects people that are involved in, that will sign up for the PACE program. We had testimony that 50 people last year dropped off the PACE program because they couldn't afford it, because they couldn't pay the additional money in that. It's $159,000 in SGF, and it's federal funds. The total is $394,000. But that raises that program for just PACE participants, anybody that wants to join the PACE program, up to 300% of their Social Security. So we believe that that will, in fact, spur folks to get on the PACE program, and when they do, we will save 10%. So that's the PACE program.
All right, thank you, Chairman Carpenter. Committee, any questions for Chairman Carpenter for fiscal year 2022? Representative Ballard.
Yes, I think at this point we have to add that. I think at this point we have to add the funding for the brain injury in 2022.
And what would that amount be, Chairman Carpenter?
I didn't have any funding in there, so it would be her former motion.
For the waiting list. So since we found,
Representative Ballard.
Since May 1st, we know there will be a waiting list, and we didn't put any money in. We put the study in. That we have an amount, but something tells me it was 8 million.
Oh, yeah.
Chairman Carpenter.
Let me see where that is here. Oh, they did. It's in where? Too much paper. Okay, to fully fund the agency's request in 2022, it would be 5.8 million state general fund, 8.8 million in federal funds, for a total of 14 million. I think.
So was there a particular reason why the funding was not included in the Budget Committee's recommendation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you've seen how much money we're already dealing with. The that the committee took was to see why we have a wait list. I mean, this thing is just, as I said earlier, this thing is just going up. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but I certainly would like to take a look at why we're having so many people on this brain injury deal before we just start down that road.
So really, the recommendation by the Budget Committee is to seek out whether or not there's going to be a brain injury waiver and not necessarily at that time fund it.
Correct.
Okay. Representative Ballard.
When we were discussing that, I think that came up, but that was before we had a May 1st list that we may have to go to a waiting list. So,
correct.
Yeah, am I correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So at that
Yeah.
point, so we didn't do it because we thought we had the time for the study and everything else before that would happen. But then we found out May 1st, which is just right around the corner, that we may have to waiting list. And as you heard the chairman say, a waiting list is not good at all for this particular waiver. So at that point, and I want you to know I did discuss it with him, I'm not just going rogue here.
I know.
Okay, that we propose, if it was 5.8, that we propose 5 million to alleviate that waiting list.
So Representative Ballard, do you have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so restate your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we add 5 million to the brain waiver in 2022.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Estes. Discussion on the motion?
I might add
Chairman Carpenter.
a few things that I didn't know exactly the numbers. The agency did request $8.7 million in all funds of $21 million, but it was not accepted by the governor. And then we also did have a sheet provided to us. Current appropriations are about 20 million for 21, 21 million for 22. Estimated cost without all funds, 25 and 43. The estimated shortfall without a wait list is $5 million in 2021 and 21 million in 2022.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Ballard, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. Further discussion on fiscal year 2022. All right, seeing none, Chairman Carpenter, you may make a motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, committee, for enduring all this. And I would make a motion we improve the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services for 21 and 22 as amended.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Kincannon. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. And Representative Helgerson would like to have his vote recorded. All right, committee, that concludes all of the items that we had on today's agenda. Next week, if you'll notice the agenda, it is meeting on call of the chair. I'm not anticipating of having any meetings next week since we're going to be anticipated to be on the floor all day. So the next meeting that we'll probably have will be most likely when we return from turnaround, and that'll be on March 10th. So we are adjourned.